Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my recap of September 2023. I will include some general life updates, the decks I've received or worked with the most this month, books I've read, some thoughts about reading for October, and a check-in around my to explore / wish list of divination tools, which has grown since my last update. I'll probably title this video something that makes clear that September has not been a good month. September has not been a good month. Maybe that's the title of the video. Who knows? Anyway, the general life updates for September are pretty much all, not great, and also are medical in nature. So if you want to skip that, you can skip to the tag, the timestamp for the decks I've received this month and bypass that conversation if you would like. I will not be remotely, negatively affected by that. I know that for some folks, like listening to conversations about medical things is like not something that they're up for, and that's completely fine. So with that preamble out of the way, September has been really, it feels like the most, dominating of my energy and time issue that I've been dealing with in September is that my hair has started falling out. It started falling out very noticeably and very quickly a couple of weeks ago, like almost 3 weeks ago now. So I've been trying to deal with that pretty much all month. And deal with that, I mean, kind of deal with that in terms like mentally and psychologically deal with that, but also deal with that in terms of trying to find out, if possible, what exactly is going on, because I don't know why this is happening. So I have seen my doctor. We have ruled out some significant possibilities, and if anything, we've ruled out the more kind of medically serious possibilities actually through blood work. So I know a couple of things that were possibilities that it is not. There is a chance that this is a kind of aftershock byproduct of having had such a bad fever when I had the flu in very early August, which I mentioned in my August recap. Apparently this is a thing that happens sometimes after a big shock to the body, and an illness, with a prolonged fever can be one of those things. If it is that, it's temporary, probably, but we really don't know. So I've been referred to a specialist who I will see in a couple of weeks. I've been given a pretty unpleasant medical shampoo and told to use nothing but that on my head, by my doctor, but with the acknowledgement that it's kind of a guess, like this might help, it might not, but it won't hurt anything kind of thing. It's not helping. It's not helping at all. So I've spent September rapidly losing my hair and washing my hair with stinky shampoo that is not helping to fix the problem at all. I went hat shopping. I don't like hats, but here we are. It's noticeable. So I've been dealing with that, getting the medical attention, good things. And trying to deal with it mentally has been interesting, because I will just say, and I'm not like judging myself for this or anything, but it has bothered me a lot more than I ever would have thought that something like this would. I'm not at this point concerned that it's, likely to be something very, medically serious. The specialist I'm being sent to see is a dermatologist. My doctor thinks it's something localized. I'm not concerned about it in that way, but it has been weird. It's weird and distressing to just see it all falling off and not know if it's permanent, not know when it's going to stop, if it's going to stop. And I guess a part of me is trying to figure out why I'm bothered by this, because like I've spent a fair amount of time with like brush cuts, like it's not like I have waist length hair that I'm really, really attached to, like not at all. And my best friend my best friend is 6'8.5", so has seen the top of my head a fair amount over the last 20 years. And he even kind of said the same thing, like, well, of all the people this could happen to, like, you seem like you would be less bothered by it, than this. And, so we've talked about that, and I've been thinking about that, and I don't know. I will share when I know something, but I may be wearing hats for a while. I don't know. My plan right now is to go to the dermatologist, see whatever they say, and ask them if it's okay, like if there's any medical reason not to, just clipper it all off, because then I would just to not have the like distress of hands full of hair in the shower. So I'm gonna probably do the clip, which I did during, lockdowns and stuff anyway, so it hasn't even been that long since I've done that, but we'll see. The other thing that's happened, very nice way to end the month. My spouse has COVID. We just found this out, and we've avoided it up to this point. There are some medical concerns in our household for my spouse specifically, but finally it has happened. I am happy to say right now that it is mild. It seems to be, in terms of symptoms, like it's not awful. It could be far, far worse than it is. So I'm grateful for that and hope that continues to be the case. I'm testing negative and really not enjoying the experience of like distancing and quarantining in my own house alone. We're probably not doing a very good job of it, to be honest, but, trying. So that is just lonely amidst everything else. So that's been my September. Crappy. And also busy because I have a second job, for folks who don't know. I have a regular kind of 40-hour a week full-time job, and then I have an extra job, a second job that I love that's 5 hours a week that has really picked up in the number of hours I need to put in. It's temporary. I knew it was coming. I signed up for this, but it has meant that in September I've put in some like 70-hour work weeks, which is also probably not, helping my mental state at this point. I'm learning to say no to things, give myself firm cutoffs in terms of, how long I'm putting in terms of this extra work. I stepped down from a volunteer commitment this month, just because anything and everything where I can kind of protect some private time, whether that be like alone time for myself, to read and read cards or spend time with my partner or Zoom with friends or, whatever it might be. I need that time and I need to like really fiercely protect that time right now. So I've been doing a mediocre job of that, we'll say. One fun thing that I can think of that happened in September, that's, this time of year, and I'll have more to say about it later, is that I got planner mail. I got my planners, or most of them anyway, for 2024. Holy shit, 2024. So I will show what my setup is going to look like later on when that is in order. But for a personal planner for 2024, I got the Kinbor Weekly. And this is a Dragon Scales Year of the Dragon inspired one. And I really like this size, and I currently have this cork cover with the Kinbor Weeks in it, so this will fit right into the cover that I already have. That's a size that I found that I really like, so very happy with that. It goes with the pen that I'm using with my planner. Perfect. And I got my Hobonichi Techo planner page a day, which will be for my morning readings. Cards of the day, really. It's usually 3 for me. I do my little brief journal in the morning in here, as well as documenting some other things in here as well. So those are here. I'm waiting on, which will be arriving next month, November, I think, my honeycomb almanac, which I will share more about when I get. But that was basically the highlight of September, was getting some stationery amidst a whole lot of shit. That's my September. Now, decks I've received this month, I will just refer folks back to my 54321 Tarot VR, because for that one, by Kelly Bear was the originator of that tag. For the 54321 Tarot, for my 5 tarot decks to show, I chose my 5 most recent arrivals in my collection, and so that encompassed the decks that I received in September. I'll show them very briefly here, but I don't want to kind of go through and, get out all the cards again, because I just did that. So I received in September the Turning Terrestrial Tides Tarot. This is by Sarah Calvarese Allen, published by PM Press. PM Press is an anarchist publisher. They're fabulous. They're nice folks. They kickstart a lot of things, including their books, which is a good way to get a book early and affordably. They haven't really published, I think they've done 2 tarot decks now, and they're both like just coming out. The other one was a collaborative deck. This one is a zine style. So it's black and white with some cutouts. I'm going to make a video walkthrough of this. This is cool because with PM Press, this is a Kickstarter deck, but it's mass market. They're kickstarting their production runs, basically. So this will be, like, as I understand it, mass market available. Mostly I backed it on Kickstarter because I wanted the hoodie and I thought that it would save me on shipping. So that's what I did. Cool deck, Turning Terrestrial Tides. I will make a video sharing my thoughts. I also got Macondo Tarot and Macondo Tarot Mini. The mini was a stretch goal, so it was like a freebie for everybody. It's very mini. And then the large size deck has some cool gold on it. I'll show. Remember how 2 minutes ago I said I wasn't going to get the cards out because I just did this in a prior video and then I did it anyway? There you go. The Macondo Tarot has a very cool art style. I was really excited to see this. The back has these metallic fish on it. And this is a Colombian magical realism inspired deck, particularly inspired by the characters of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and the 100 Years of Solitude. I've read other Marquez before, but not that particular novel, and full disclosure, I started that novel this month and I DNF'd it. I DNF'd it because the way that violence against women was treated in that book really, no, life's too short. I'm not gonna subject myself to that right now. So I DNF'd Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Never thought I would say that. I did read some other books by him previously though, so just not the most famous one. I'm sure I'll read more. I will say I'm really liking the little guidebook for the Macondo Tarot, and it really explicitly talks about, some patriarchal ideas, that definitely come through in that writing. So I appreciate that very much. I think I'm going to really like getting into this deck. I went for there's a big book too. So I backed, this was an extra. The book is actually about half as long as it looks because it has English and Spanish in it. It has full color pictures in it, and I'm quite excited to get into this. And the book and of the deck are by Andres Marquinez Casas, who is fabulous throughout the Kickstarter, like super communicative. We messaged back and forth a few times. Really good. This is going to be a deep dive. More on that later. I also got gifted by a wonderful friend, the Tarot of the Crystal World. This is a deck that I totally missed on Kickstarter, and I am so happy to have this. It is going to become available again. It's currently not, but when I asked the creator, Brooke Penrose, he said yes, it's going to be sold again. He has another Kickstarter that's for a game, I think, that is coming soon to Kickstarter. So I think it's just kind of a matter of not doing a bunch of projects at the same time while also running a web shop. There is a plan to make this available, which I'm very glad about, because I don't like a pregnant empress, but the art is beautiful. I've been obsessed with this deck. Basically, for decks I've worked with in September, this is kind of it. I've been reading the Macondo Tarot book a bit, but like this is the deck that I've been using, and any Oracle deck that I thought might go with it. So this deck actually came with an Oracle deck. There's an Oracle deck with a slightly different back. And the same art style. And I've been using these a little bit together, and I've been using this a little bit apart. But the Tarot of the Crystal World really goes with a lot of things, it seems like. I really have been liking it with the Threadbound Oracle by Cedar McLeod, which you wouldn't necessarily think would go, but does. Like the color palettes are more similar than you would think they are, and the card stocks are not dissimilar, and they just look really good together. So I've been using those together. I've been pairing Crystal World with my own deck, my OM deck, and really anything else I can think of, because I'm obsessed with it. So nothing else has gotten any attention. It's the only deck I've been using in September for the most part. So that's decks for September. And okay, next thing. Books. Books I've read finished this month. I read 9 books this month. So I will start with the nonfiction, of which there were 3. Then I will touch on the one that is a mix of fiction and nonfiction, which doesn't happen too often. And then the fiction at the end, and I'll put not that way, this way. I'll put a picture of the book here, if it's an ebook, which many of them were, but not all. So I just finished reading the Wild Magic Wildwood Tarot workbook. This is a book that is completely separate, like sold separately from the deck. The deck comes with a guidebook that is also like about this thick and this large in the package that you buy the deck. This is completely separate, and there's also a third book, The Year in the Wildwood, which I will talk more about in another video. So 3 guidebooks, all significantly like sized for the same deck. Now, this one, I really like this. I will just say though, from like, to get it out of the way, this book has been done a disservice by being called workbook. This is not a workbook. There is nothing workbook about this. It's really not. To me, a workbook is like something that you write in, right? Or that you have the option of writing in. This, there's a notes page at the end. And that's the sum total of this being a workbook. I think that the reason that it ended up called this, I suspect, is explained in the introduction, where, who's writing? John Matthews says, in the original book that accompanies the deck, so it's the guidebook, we did not have a lot of room for practical exercises and could only include a couple of spreads. In this book, we can finally put this right, using some of the work we devised for the workshops that we were able to do in the first year of the deck's publication, and other ideas that we have spent time working on since then, adding deeper levels of understanding and knowledge that underlie the imagery on every card. So because this includes some content from workshops, I think, is why it became called workbook. If you approach this hoping for a workbook, you will not like it, because that's not what it is. It includes a whole bunch of kind of essays, like thoughts on all different things. There's some really interesting content about how tarot works and how tarot might work that veers into some really interesting kind of scientific territory, getting into kind of quantum physics and things like this, which was interesting. There's a section on the lore of the Wildwood, which gets into kind of Celtic stories and things like this about the different figures and the different animals on the cards, which goes beyond what's in the guidebook, which I enjoyed. I really liked, there's a section called Wild Archetypes in the middle of the book. And this is like autobiographical content by Mark Ryan, talking about kind of different people in his life and experiences that he's had that figure into these different cards. You know, so he talks about kind of interactions with Sir Anthony Hopkins in the Green Man card. You know, like, and this is not necessarily content that's going to make the deck more usable, but I loved it. And I now want to read maybe some more autobiographical writing by Mark Ryan. He's had a really interesting life, certainly, and done a lot of interesting things. I really liked that section. And then the end of the book, that starts in page 113 and goes to 150 something, wherever the book ends, is really the activity stuff. And there are some suggestions, like making a kind of altar based around Wildwood ideas, some guided meditations, and a bunch of spreads, several of which I have bookmarked and think are quite good. I think I might maybe make a video demonstrating one or two of them. That would be good, I think. They're good. And then there's also some suggestions around kind of getting to know the court cards, which in this deck are animals, and different ways to read reversals. Like, there's some useful content for kind of a newer tarot reader, I would say, in here, but it's all specifically keyed to the Wildwood Tarot, which is interesting. Overall, I really liked this a lot, so I am happy with that. I read Secreti Geomantici by Polyphanes. This is, I printed this at Staples, just to be clear. This is a book on geomantic magic by the author of the blog Digital Ambler, or the website Digital Ambler, which I think is really good. Digital Ambler is fantastic. If you haven't looked at it, go do that. He is really knowledgeable, and he's really knowledgeable about geomancy, which is the part of the website that I'm most interested in. And so this is a book where he presents original ideas about how to incorporate the 16 geomancy figures into a magical practice. And so he talks about how other kinds of systems of symbols have been incorporated into ceremonial magic and ritual magic and different kinds of workings, but geomancy hasn't to the same degree. And so this is kind of a way of exploring possibilities there. So in terms of the contents, there's a sections on hand gestures inspired by the geomancy figures, candle working, sigil making, timing, like timing of rituals and figuring out timing using geomancy and astrology. This is really good. I'm not going to pretend some of this didn't go way over my head, because I would say I'm a geomancy beginner, maybe late beginner, early intermediate. Really good. It'll have to probably be a reread, but check out Digital Ambler because it's fantastic. I read a short book called The Occult Features of Anarchism by Erica Lagalis. This is a book that looks at kind of historical interconnections between relationships between Western European anarchist movements and figures therein, and particular kinds of occult histories, particularly around kind of Freemasonry and things like this, right? Interesting. The historical content was interesting. it's presented as a kind of accessible, like something in the preface kind of pitches it as like accessible introduction to this material. It is not. I have a doctorate in a field that is not unassociated with the content in this book, and I found it to be quite dense. Like, I'll just say that. If you're interested in the history of anarchism and the history of the occult, then yes, super interesting. It makes some contemporary arguments in terms of kind of contemporary social movement dynamics that, relate to how conspiracy theorizing is framed in different kinds of conversations that I don't feel particularly sympathetic to. But it also made some interesting arguments about kind of anarchism's relationship with secularism, which I was much more amenable to and found much more compelling. So, I don't know that this will be a book of interest to any of my subscribers, really, but I'm glad that I got a chance to read it. It had been on my list for a long time. I learned some things. The bibliography is very dense, and I've put asterisks beside things to follow up on. So, I will be doing that. What is next? I read a fabulous book called Between Dystopias, The Road to Afro-Pantheology by Ogunnachewe Donald E. Pecky and Jonathan Omanga. And this was really good. So this is the book that I mentioned that is a mix of fiction and nonfiction. And so the fiction is short fiction. It is mostly short stories and maybe a novella as well. And then there are some essays interspersed in between that are fairly short. So it's an interesting kind of structure for a book. And they talk about coming up with this kind of concept of Afro-Pantheology, pantheology having to do with kind of the study of pantheons, right? So in African context. And they talk about the problematics of, books that contain African spiritual and religious concepts and ideas and knowledges that have been passed down, through knowledge keepers of various sorts, and the tendency of these books when they're published to be classed as fantasy, and what that kind of does in terms of how these kind of spiritual knowledge frameworks are being cast as fantastical. And so that's kind of the opening of the book, is talking about this idea of Afro-pantheological writings. And then the short stories and the novella kind of follow this this idea. And there are also some brief kind of essay reflections on publishing in various kind of spheres as African authors, and kind of exclusionary dynamics in publishing and things like this. It was very, very good. 5 stars. Excellent read. And that I got as an advanced reader copy, so I don't think that it's even out yet, but keep an eye out for Between Dystopias. It's really, really good. I would highly recommend it. I read, finally, The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty, who is an author who I have read before. She wrote the trilogy that starts with City of Brass. I loved that trilogy. And this one is the beginning of a trilogy as well, following a pirate named Amina al-Sirafi. And this is a historical setting. The City of Brass included, much more non-historical, I would say, like mythological kind of influenced content, whereas like the setting for this is entirely historical, right? And she includes a bibliography of some different books that you can look at to learn about that context, which is kind of the different cities and countries bordering the Indian Ocean and the kind of travel by sea across the Indian Ocean. And I really enjoyed this. So the story follows, this pirate named Amina who kind of gets sucked back into piracy after having left it. And I won't say too much more than that. It's an adventure. Amina is funny and clever and a great protagonist and a mother. And, as somebody to follow through a trilogy, I'm more than happy, with Amina. So I can't recommend her books enough. This was very, very good. I read Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This is my first Fonda Lee, but I've wanted to read her work for quite some time. Untethered Sky is a novella, very short, read it in one sitting, about a character named Esther, and she goes to train rocks. And, these are massive raptor birds. And she specifically, and those around her hunt alongside rocks and specifically hunt manticores, which are terrorizing the towns, right? And this was good, I would say. I definitely want to read more Fonda Lee on the basis of this. I thought it was well written. I liked the main character. I liked the secondary characters. Again, it was a very quick read. I did think that it skewed YA for my taste. That is not how it's marketed. I recognize that these are marketing categories. It's very much a coming of age kind of a storyline, right? And the protagonist is, I think, 18 at the start of the book. So I would say YA crossover appeal. And I think probably the level of graphic violence in this book is, in terms of the rocks killing the manticores and other interactions between non-human animals. The kind of goriness involved there is probably the reason that it's not marketed YA, but it feels that way to me. But I liked it overall. I read The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This has been on my list forever. And this was excellent. And Simon Jimenez has another novel that I plan to read. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but yeah, I know that it's on my e-reader because I put it there right after I finished The Vanished Birds. This is a space opera that deals with a kind of world wherein the quick speed space travel technology that is being used affects how time elapses and how time is experienced by people who are on ships versus people who are kind of planet side. So the main character is a captain who, because she's doing these kind of long haul trips, time doesn't flow in the same way for her and her crew. All of her family and her friends and anybody she knows, ages by years and years, in what she experiences as a few months, right? And within that, there's a whole kind of plot about possibilities for even faster space technology, and then there's this kind of colonial dynamics of these kind of corporations that take over planets and, get different kinds of resources from them, including labor. And it's a very anti-capitalist novel, I would say. It's very definitely political sci-fi in the best way. I loved The Vanished Birds, and it's literary sci-fi. The writing is extraordinary, so I would suggest that book for sure. I read Mammoths at the Gates, Multiple Mammoths, One Gate. Mammoths at the Gate by Nevo. This is a brand new release, And this is part of the Singing Hills cycle of novellas. It's the 4th one. There's a 5th one in the works. And these novellas follow a character named Chi, and they are a story monk. They collect stories, and they travel around with a bird who talks and who has a perfect memory. And so the story monks in their abbey live alongside these birds, and they collect histories. They archive, the histories and stories of the people. And in Mammoths at the Gate, Chi returns to their monastery and finds that there are war mammoths at the gate, and it goes from there. And this is a novella that deals with grief, with processing change amidst grief. It is very, very good. I really like this series. I will read them all. Very, very good. They're fairly standalone. Like, I think that this being the 4th one, you could theoretically read it without having read the others, but they do refer to each other a little bit, and it is the same protagonist throughout. So I would say, for starting the Singing Hills cycle, to start with the 1st one and not this. And finally, I read a Fireborn of Exile by Aliette de Bodard. This is an author that I really like, who I mentioned, I think I read last month as well. She writes this series of kind of all pretty standalone short stories, novellas, novels set in a science fictional future world, heavily influenced by particularly Vietnamese culture. And A Fireborn of Exile is the latest novel. I got this as an advanced reader copy as well, and it is pretty kind of fast-paced. It has some romantic aspect to it. It also has kind of mystery aspect to it. I struggle to say anything about this without giving away core parts of this. Something that I really like about these books is that in this kind of universe, sentient spaceships form families with humans and are part of human lineages, and I find that really interesting, and I think that it's really well done. So really with this, you could start anywhere. I would maybe suggest starting with one of the shorter works in this before going straight to A Fireborn of Exile, which I think it might be the longest work in this collection so far. But all good. I really like this. Recommend it. I had a good reading month. I had a shitty month in general, but I had a good reading month. I really enjoyed what I read. I did have a few DNFs in there, but focusing on the positive. Book plans for October, very briefly. I have some exciting book plans for October. One of them is that I'm reading this book, Sacred Gender, by Ariana Serpentine. This I'm buddy reading with a bunch of other druids, which I'm really excited about. The back of the book says this is a cosmology of trans and non-binary spiritual identities. I'm excited for this. So this is a pretty new release. It came up that there were folks who were interested in it and none of us had read it, so we're now buddy reading through the month of October. We've divided up the 6 chapters to be covered throughout October. I've just started. I read the preface and some of chapter 1, and so far I'm happy. I have only really read the terminology parts, but it's pretty well done so far, so I'm hoping to have exciting things to share about that. I'm also, in the month of October, I am rereading a work of fiction. This almost never happens. It's probably been at least 5 years since I've reread anything. It happens very rarely, and it happens really rarely when it's not for work. So there's certain novels and short stories that I've reread multiple times because I've taught them. I've taught Ursula Le Guin, I've taught Octavia Butler, I've taught Ted Chiang. I've taught several science fiction authors in the context of my academic teaching career. And so those, of course, I'm rereading those books so they're fresh in mind when I'm talking about them with students, but just to reread for enjoyment is very rare. I am rereading This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal Motar and Max Gladstone, because that has been picked for Katie Flowers' Blossom Book Club, and I loved this book when I read it the first time. It's also the kind of book that I feel like I'm going to get more out of the second time. It is a bit dense and a bit flowery, so I'm excited for that. It's a very romantic time war book. So if you've read This Is How You Lose the Time War, tell me what you thought about it in the comments, because I was very into it. My other book plan for October is to just read horror books. Creepy, spooky, scary horror books for October. I'm not a huge horror reader year round, but in October I like to make a point of like going through my list of books I want to read that's never ending, that I keep on Goodreads, and find the spookiest ones and read them in October. So I just started Never Whistle at Night, Indigenous dark fiction anthology. I'm 2 short stories in, and then I have some other ones that I would like to read. I would like to try reading Victor Laval. Victor Laval came up in, I want to say, 9 Coins video, talking about getting some of his books. I think that this October is going to be the time that I finally read some of that. So I'm looking forward to Horror October. Tell me if you do spooky things in October, movies, television shows, books, any of it. Tell me about your horrifying October plans. I would love to hear about them. That's books. We're at 41 minutes. So I want to finish just by checking in on my list of things to explore / my wish list. It has moved. It has. So the last time I checked in, I know that I had Earth Blessings Oracle on my wish list, which is very much like the Sea Soul Journeys Oracle. It's mass market, kind of affirming messages on each with nature photography. But Earth Blessings Oracle is seasonally based versus ocean based. That is still on my list. Tarot for the Great Outdoors is still on my list. There is a tiny bit of me that is tempted to wait to see if something might change with the card stock. I don't know how often that happens, though. I think it's probably unrealistic thinking. Tarot for the Great Outdoors is still on my wish list. Lenin's Statue Tarot is still on my wish list. That will not happen until I do a bigger Make Playing Cards order, though, because I never order just one thing from there at a time. What else is there? Okay, possibly new things, and some shopping. I did back the Ink Witch Tarot today on Kickstarter. This is a deck that has been out before. This is, I think, a second edition of the Ink Witch Tarot with some expansion packs and some a new kind of 79th card. It has multiple Lovers cards. I'm not sure if the first edition did as well or if this is a new thing. But I'm excited for the Ink Witch Tarot. This is a deck that is not necessarily one that would grab me right away, but this is by the same creator, his name's Eric, of the Endless Oracle, which I love and is one of my favorite recent Oracle purchases. So that has led me to the tarot. It does have nice minors, I think, that are they're kind of illustrated pips in a lot of cases, which I do like. Also, backing the Ink Witch Tarot means that I can get the Endless Oracle's expansion packs without paying shipping for just those. So that's part of the motivation as well, or it's a bonus. So I backed the Ink Witch Tarot. I backed the Marseille Prendre Vie by Auntie Kay's Tarot, which I did a little sneak peek at on my channel already. It has hit its goal now, so if you've been thinking about Marseille Prendre Vie but weren't sure if it was going to, now it has, so you should go take a look. Also, now there are t-shirts, and you gotta, love a tarot t-shirt, so check out that one. New on my wish list. I would really like to get at some point. I don't know when, but it's a strong like possibility on my to explore / wish list, is the Inner Eye Oracle by Stephen Bright. Stephen Bright, everybody will know. You know, he's done decks before, a tarot deck, a Kipper deck, I think. The Inner Eye Oracle is playing card based. I really like the kind of clean, you know, line work drawings on it. I really like the design. It seems like it's really, really well thought out. Kelly from The Truth and Story did a walkthrough of it that's really good. If you want to check that out, I think that I would really like this oracle. It's mass market, so I know it's going to stay available. That's on my wish list for sure. I am intrigued by a mass market deck called the Celtic Healing Oracle. It's a black and white deck. I need to look at this more. But I like the art style. And I wonder if the Celtic Healing Oracle might get along with some of my Druid decks well. And style-wise, it reminds me a little bit of something like Thea's Tarot, which I also like. I have the who knows when it's going to be ready, but I'll want it when it is, Aquarius Rising Oracle, which is an oracle deck being worked on by Charlie Claire Burgess, who just funded the, it's a Marseille deck. I'm going to forget the name, but of course I backed it. The Gay Marseille. Charlie Claire Burgess has an Aquarius Rising Oracle, which is also a playing card based oracle, on their website, which is on my list. Also, I did something that is very, it's pretty unlike me. I'm not going to say it's very unlike me. That would probably be false. I added a deck to my list and then immediately checked it off and bought it. I'm waiting on it in the mail. I'm going to show it when it gets here. And that is Le Tarot de Paysage Intérieur, the tarot of like internal landscapes. So, or inner landscapes, I would say. Is how I would say that's inner landscapes, tarot of inner landscapes. This is a French indie deck that I found, and I have been kind of not looking in a really deliberate way, but like kind of keeping an eye open way for a very abstract tarot deck that would work for me. And I've looked at quite a few. I've owned one or two that are kind of very abstract paintings based tarot decks, and I think this one is the one that I'm really going to get along well with, so I'm very excited about that. That is my wish list. So other than the one that I just bought and the ones that I just backed, mostly mass market at this point, or like forthcoming, who knows when, not available at all. But that's my list. So I will leave it there. That's my September. Not the best month. How was your September? I hope your September was good. I hope your October is good. I will see you soon enough in another video, and I wish you all well. Take care. See you again soon. Thanks for hanging out with me today.